Yeah, after the ball, after the ball is over. Oh wait, you're supposed to be over here. I'm looking at you over there. How was the show, man?
It was nice.
Yeah, is that downplaying? It was nice. Was it fantastic?
It had some real. It really had some a good number of really significant highlights. Beautiful, beautiful, magical stuff happening. There's a couple of things that made me bummed. Like we sort of and it just it sort of was a train wreck, and that was disappointing. It wasn't actually a train wreck. It was just like a tube. I mean, instead of like being the thing that when we last worked on it in the rehearsal, it sort of just like it really sort of grew
Yeah.
and peaked and then started again and did
Okay.
this
So, but like,
really.
well, sorry, I'm cutting you
Yeah.
off, but
Oh,
like
sorry. No,
overall, the
no.
show, because I think
Yeah,
you might be doing
that's
the
good.
artist thing that we all do is you go like go immediately to the thing that didn't work, but like the show overall, was it a glorious experience? Did you trip the light fantastic?
I think it was a very very good show. I think that, and the reason that I fixated on the few things that went wrong was because afterwards I was like, there was a lot of great things about this. Why don't I feel better? Because I didn't come off the stage feeling the glory, and it took me a while,
Huh.
and to process the fact that like, oh, it was just a couple of key sort of major disappointments that sort of. But I heard somewhere somebody said when you come out, if you have a disappointing show, like never tell the people that are in the audience who are coming up to you saying this was great, it was so
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful, and like never be like, oh, it wasn't very good.
yeah,
I needed to hear that. It's good advice.
yeah. Well,
But
okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say so, I didn't do that explicitly, but I'm wondering if I did it a little bit with my face. You
Yeah,
know, sort of like they'd come and be like, "Great!" And I'd be like, I was sort of what I was feeling was, I'm sorry.
yeah, 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 yeah. Resting disappointed
Disappointed
face.
you.
Yeah. Well, okay, this is very much on my mind because since we last did this, I did my shoot, my video shoot. You and I
Yeah.
talked about it a little bit, but I that was a week ago, 7 days ago, I guess, 6 days ago, and I hit like I told you about it, man. I just went right to the bottom of the thing afterwards, and I didn't feel as terrible as I have in the past. So I was like, okay, well, I know I've felt bad in the past, and I don't feel as terrible, even though I feel terrible. So maybe it wasn't so bad. But it really, just now, just before we did this, I was watching the footage and I watched some with Rebecca, and I'm finally coming around to realizing that the footage is kind of great. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So I'm finally feeling good about it. But the last week has been mostly trying to ignore it, being disappointed, being embarrassed that I did this, feeling like, well, that was a worthwhile experiment. I guess that's not a good path for the future. And there's just been so much. The post show crash is real, and maybe I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't even be fought. It should just be recognized. I don't really know what to do about it, but it's a real thing. It's like I know I cannot trust my summary of how things went in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, and I had a very similar thing last night. There were these. So we have this. We have all kinds of people coming up and coming down, and it's a cool thing. And but because of that, like there were just like there's several people just like knocked it out of the park
Yeah.
last night. And so people were getting a lot of praise, and I think people actually probably a lot of people were coming up to me saying that was beautiful, like in general. But for some reason, I was able to in my mind be like, oh yeah, you're thinking about what they did and what they did, and that was awesome, and that was awesome, and thinking it didn't really have nothing to do with me, and that I was the big bummer. And when I was going to bed last night, um, Katrina actually she just told me that I did a great job and that it was great that I and it's funny how I just needed to hear that. It's so I feel like when you put yourself out there like you do as a creative person, you do need validation. I mean, we need people around us
Yeah.
who are able to see, are able to feed back
Yeah.
some good positive feedback.
Totally, but why is it though that we almost can't hear it? We like
Yeah.
force it away. Like you're right. If I think back to the last week, there's been a lot of people who are like, "Yeah, that was great. Can't believe you pulled it off." And I'm finding ways to interpret what they're saying as kindness and consolation. You know,
Yeah,
don't feel so
totally.
bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
It's
a
okay.
yeah.
The injuries will heal.
Yeah. It was a admirable thing to attempt, you know? And it's like, I mean, so let's say that you get fully established, you know, let's say like your show becomes a hit, your band becomes a hit and you're touring. Do you think we would continue to be such babies forever? Like, you know, or is it like after a while you start to be like, okay, yeah, audiences love it and they love that show and I did pretty well? Or do you think it's always going to be that just like you put all the energy out there, you fall off a cliff and feel terrible and then you need like a professional handler to like pat you on the back and tell you it's okay?
No, I don't think so. I actually think that I actually think that you probably it's not far from. I think you get skills to the point where you know how to kill. You know, I mean, and you're gonna have ups and downs if you're playing all the time. You're gonna have shows that are so good that another show is not quite as good. But I do think that um, I do think that you learn how like what works,
Yeah.
what little things
Well, but see, that's a little
to lean
different.
into.
The like what works, the mechanisms of performing to me is different than the allowing yourself to believe that it went well, allowing yourself to feel good about what just happened.
Have you? I Yeah, okay, maybe you're right. I guess I'm wondering. I'm checking my memory and thinking that I feel like there have been times where it's just clear that
We
that
killed it.
whatever prep you did, it just sort of like it just worked. It connected.
But
Everything
it
came
sounds
together.
like it sounds like you had a great show. And it sounds like you did great yourself in the context of that great show. And it's just going to take you a while to work back to that realization or enough uh, uh, compliments
Or
and
maybe.
reinforcements in the right moments
Mhm.
from the right person at the right time. And it's the same thing that I feel like I've just experienced over the last week. I kind of had a great shoot last week, but I just am just
You were the last one
realizing
to know.
I'm the last one to know. It's 6 or 7 days later, and I'm allowing myself, you know, and just looking at some of the footage and being like, this is fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
yeah, and you know, and a lot of that's not me. That's also the crew. That's the camera person and the sound person and the producer. Like everybody that chipped in, and Jeremiah as a subject was amazing. So, but anyway, it was great.
No,
But
that's
I
great.
just had I couldn't see it and I couldn't feel it. So you know, and even things that like I remember think being in my head early on in the shoot and being like, I wonder why I'm so stiff. I wonder why I can't think of a thing to ask. I can't think of a thing to say. And I just this morning for the first time went back and looked at that footage because I couldn't bear to look at it before, and also I couldn't figure it out on my computer because it couldn't keep up. Anyway, so I went back and looked at that footage, and it actually is like kind of great. And I you know maybe for me I know my spectrum, and maybe I was on the stiff end of my spectrum, but like with a little bit of perspective, I look at it and I was like, no, that was good. It was comfortable. It was like engaging. Uh, but man, you know, I don't know. It is. I mean, it would be. I wonder if that's one of the superpowers you got to develop if you're gonna like actually have a creative life as your primary life is the power to not uh, crawl into fetal position after.
Well, what if it makes me think that it makes me think of dailies, how
Mm,
when you're on a real shoot, you go and you watch the stuff. And I think if you had been able to see good stuff and with the people that you worked with,
mm,
then the feedback loop I think probably gets closed. It's that not knowing for 4 days because I think and I
mm.
remember that was one of the rituals back in my 20s when I was in a band. We'd have a show, and there'd be five guys in the band, and there'd be friends, And then after the show, we'd all go to a bar and we'd be reliving all the little details. So the things that we didn't like, the things that were great, and we would oftentimes we'd stay up all night and have end up at a New York City diner at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
And we
And
lived in Pittsburgh. It was crazy.
yeah, but that whole thing, I feel like that was a really important way to close that feedback loop, to close the
Hmm.
time frame on
Just
that feedback
process
loop,
the heck out of it.
and that you process that with everybody, sort of, because I think there's something about the specific doubts that you
Hmm.
have.
Hmm.
Like, it was so nice for me when I was talking to Katrina about um I was, sort of vaguely feeling bad about it. And then we started going through, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, that was a little rough." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's why I feel so bad. It's because
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
song and this song, which I had put so much heart into, sort of just like didn't get off the ground." And it was fine. It was just like
Yeah.
a song between a great song and another great song. But that was supposed to be a great song.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
but like once you process it, then you can sort of move on. So it's not even so much that that it has to be all good feedback.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so maybe the dailies thing is a really smart thing to just like somehow figure out a way. Like, okay, let's sit down and watch the
Right.
footage that same day.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, but it also makes me think of this other thing, which is like, the most awkward part of the shoot by far was me talking directly to the camera, being like, "Here's what I'm interested in this and this, and so now today we're at the house of my friend." And I knew that was going to be hard, and I partly wanted to do it just to face my fears, because I over the years, when you put a camera at me on me and I'm supposed to look into a camera and talk, that's the most just like freezing upping ish.
Be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and I'm fine with other people. If I'm talking to you here and there's a camera on me, fine. But like, just be like, now tell the viewers at home. I'm just like, ah. So,
Yeah, that's a skill.
but
That's
I
an
tried it.
abnormal, inhuman,
Yeah,
unnatural skill.
totally. But I tried it and it went decently well right off the bat. And then I got it in
Great.
my head, and then then the gear started grinding up. And so anyway, I knew it was going to be tough, and I did it. And I don't know if we'll use it, but went back and it's decent. But here's the thing: is during the time I started making self-effacing comments, which were real. They weren't. I wasn't fishing for reassurance. I just was feeling crappy, and so people started reassuring me. And I think I have a sense, at least in my head, that there's a line that's fine for a little bit, but then you don't want to go. You don't want to just be so needy that people are that's fine. Everyone's happy to reassure someone
A little bit.
a reasonable number of times. But like, I could see like being like, can you hiring someone to just be like, can you, after every cut, can you tell me that was great? And then tell me what to fix.
It's an interesting. Maybe it's a note to director of photographies and directors of photography,
Yeah, get the plural right.
surgeons general.
Surgeon's general.
Uh, that that I mean, I bet most people need a great. The reason we're not shooting that scene again is because it was great, not because we're sick of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. Yeah, or I wonder if there is a correlation between a certain creative personality and that need for that validation or that need for reassurance.
But this is my point: is that I think it's probably, it may be cross cultures, but and maybe it's a development of people doing things like this where they're putting themselves not just in front of their tribe but potentially to a larger group than
Yeah,
beyond,
yeah,
beyond their tribe. That I think if you're going to do something like that, you need a lot of validation. I think that's valid. If
yeah.
it's like, if you're not getting a certain amount of validation, then I think it's nature's way of saying, find something else.
Look into other things, buddy.
And so, but it's tough because, if you got to be bad first to be good later, then then
Yeah,
what kind of validation do you need? And this is probably why, college and stuff is helpful, because your talent, your potential is being appreciated, if not your final product.
yeah. Well,
But
there's
I think you need it. I mean, I that's the hardest part of it. It's just like, if you don't get enough validation, you sort of feel like, this could be a big mistake.
Well, there's the audacity to put yourself out there in the first place, which seems maybe it seems normal when I see other people put themselves out there, but when I think about it myself, it feels like, oh my gosh, like what business do I have? You know, sometimes I feel fine about it and I have confidence. I'm like, sure, put a camera on me. That's gonna, you know. And other times I'm like, I don't have credentials. I didn't, you know, no one has bestowed upon me the yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the same thing is true with playing a show, or you're a musician. Hey, I'm gonna run this show, and everybody come see the show, and I'm gonna direct it, and I'm gonna sing in it, and I'm gonna play it. You know, no one is.
I'm gonna be up here. You guys look at this way at me, and I'll do stuff for hours.
And when we
You
pause,
watch it.
go like this.
Yeah, and then validate me. It's so crazy because it really is. It can be. I mean, good work if it's a show or if it's a show or a different kind of show, any or a piece of art or whatever. I mean, it can be the greatest gift
Yeah,
when somebody has done something that really is touching. But it can also be, yeah, if it's not quite there, it could be a burden to
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I, you know, so I was thinking about that feeling of audacity to just be like, yeah, I'm going to put myself out there. Maybe that sort of inherently comes hand in hand with the need to, yeah, to, like the checks and balances, nature's
Yeah.
checks and balances. And if, you know, and if people are like, oh no, it was really good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Next month I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. You know, that's
Yeah.
maybe
Uh,
maybe there is something to that. Nature's artistic checks and balances.
Well, and I think that maybe the way it really works is maybe less on the negative side and more on the positive side.
Mm,
That, when you get the sort of like this and you're like, but I really like it, you keep doing it. But like, if something really catches,
mm,
that is like a shot of adrenaline to the heart. Like, if you actually do a show and like, and it's just like people are shocked by how good it is, and they're coming to you being like, oh my God, that's like so motivating to keep going. And so it doesn't have to be just like a bludgeoning
right.
before you've sort of found it. It's just like, but once you're onto something, once something catches with
Yeah.
that, it's like coming easily from you and people are loving it, then I feel like, yeah, nature has a way of being like, ding 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 ding, this is
Yeah.
it, go 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 go, all
Yeah.
systems.
Totally. Yeah. For some reason, that made me think of there's this baseball player here on the Oakland A's. He's a pitcher, and he was pitching a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, and he got hit basically in the eye by a line drive. So you're thinking, well, his everything's over, but somehow miraculously
Oh,
his
really?
eye wasn't damaged, and so he's been out for weeks, and he just came back yesterday and pitched again, which is months sooner than anybody ever would have thought. First of all, if he was sane, he probably never would have pitched again, but he was just like, that's just me, that's who I am. And there was some quote where he was basically like, I got two kinds of messages after this happened. Either like, oh man, you had a great season, sorry you're out, or like, when are you getting back out there? And he's like, the when you getting back out there is were the ones that knew me, and I just fed off of those. The like, good job, you had a great season. That was the opposite for him, and it makes me think of just
I
like
love that.
I put out that keyboard piece, that solo keyboard piece, the Yom Kippur prayer, and I put that out just right around Yom Kippur, and then I sent it out to a bunch of friends, and I did get like really nice. I value all the reactions, but the reactions that were like, hey, this is really nice, thanks for sending it, was almost painful in a way, because I had put everything I had into it to make it just like different and express what I was trying to express, and like it was the chords that just were like they just electrified my soul. And so to get like a kind
The golf clap.
flat reaction, and it wasn't even a golf clap. I mean, they could have been, who knows? It was like they took the time to write me back and say
Yeah,
something
yeah.
nice. So, it's like, I'm
That's
not trying to be unappreciative, but it ended up giving me the overall feeling of disappointment until I finally got just a few people who were electrified, and, or who said like those chord voicings were otherworldly or something like, maybe I'm making that up. But anyway, they said something along the lines of that it had connected in that way, and that
Yeah.
I needed those things to feel like, okay, I put something out there that did what I wanted it to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's so great. Yeah. We need, I mean, I think that that ultimately the discouraging part of it, it's all about stuff in the way of your soul. You know, like if anybody could put their soul somehow through the tubes of the internet or the wires, or or through the chords of their guitar or their whatever, or through just like saying words, a poem or anything, or singing a song, their voice or whatever, if there's something that actually communicates the depth of soul, the depth of a person's soul, their honest self, then it's going to connect.
Hmm.
If you so that if you're not quite connecting, so this whole idea, I feel like there's this question of like, do I have it? Do I have it? And like sometimes you'll do something and it's just like, guess the answer might be no. Like you said at the beginning, like it was a worthwhile experiment, but I guess I'll go back to blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, it's, I think that when you get the less enthusiasm, if you are not getting the kind of like, oh my god, fanning of the flames, you got to keep going, you got to keep going, it's sort of still on you to sort of like figure out, it's like, how is it that I can push aside the
Hmm.
weeds, that are in the way of me expressing what's really in me,
Mm-hmm.
because it's still there. It's not a matter of like, oh, you don't have it. Like, you have it. There's just something that's not that you need to clean up the delivery of it somehow so that
Yeah.
it gets through and connects with other people. Um, so that's why it matters so much that when it does connect, it's just like, it's like the fax machine. And it's just like, okay, it gets through the mess, like you're connected to other people in that way. Then all of a sudden people are like, oh my god, because it actually is
Yeah.
very rare, especially, I mean, when people, well, it's just rare. And so
Yeah.
it's so magical when somebody really just is like, this is my soul and here it is in a way that you can see it. It's just, people are just like, okay,
Well,
please keep doing this.
yeah, and what's so interesting about it is sometimes that's your friends and family, and sometimes it's not. That's
Oh
one of the
yeah.
tricky things early on. Is I remember this from just a handful of years ago when I was first sort of restarting to just start down these creative paths. And who do you show it to first? Who do you get reactions from first?
Yeah.
Friends and family. And sometimes it takes all the magic and all the drive and all the excitement out of it, because they might not be, it might not be speaking to them,
Oh yeah.
or they might be in some different place or whatever it is. And so that's part of the trick, isn't it? Is finding the people out there who it connects to. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, any one of our art is not necessarily going to connect to 9 out of 10 people or 5 out of 10 people. It might be 1 out of 50,
Yeah.
and
But
those
one out of 50 is a lot of people.
1 out of 50 is a
One
lot of
out of
people.
50, there's a lot of people
But it's
in
not a
the
lot of
world.
friends and family
Right.
that are gonna go ding 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 on the scale, right? It's like if you put it out
Absolutely.
to 50
Yeah,
or
I heard.
100 people, you might get one or two that connect with it, and it's easy
Yeah,
to not
yeah,
hear
I heard.
those.
You got to go for strangers. I heard somebody say that, like just really do whatever you can to somehow get in front of strangers, because strangers see you
Mm,
as you are in this moment. Like people who already know you, who already
yeah,
have deep relationships, when they look at you, they're not looking at you today.
yeah,
They're looking at this entire history that's just like showed up, this whole story that goes
yeah.
back however long.
And it
So
can
they're
be
not even.
embarrassing to look at a
Oh
friend
yeah.
going for it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because we all have these narratives of our
Yeah,
friends, and then all of a sudden they do something like this, and it's just like, that doesn't fit my narrative, buddy.
right.
This, I need to tell you, this ain't gonna work out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
My narrative of you, this blip is the mistake, is the
yeah.
midlife crisis, where you go crazy for a little bit, then you gotta settle down
Totally.
and then come back to reality.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, oh, it's like painful. I'm cringing because that's such the center a certain fear that we all carry, isn't it? Is that we're that guy.
Oh yeah. Well, I've had that fear for so long that I'm starting to acclimate to it. I'm really starting to not care as much about that.
Yeah.
It's taken a long, long time, and I still have it. And but I think that I think that's the one good thing about putting pies in your own face over and over again for so long, that now the narrative is, for most people that know me, it's just like he's the guy who puts pies in his own face. Like
Right.
that, it's like okay, yeah. Nothing's necessarily going to work out, and probably nothing will. But this seems to be what he likes to do.
Totally. Well, and I that resonates with me. I think I care a lot less about it than I used to because I've also sort of I self-talked myself to be like, whose judgment about what am I worried about? Like
Well,
who.
and what's not cool about what you're doing, though? I mean,
But
you're like
even if
trying to
not,
get.
like let's say I wanted to sing, and I put myself out there and I sang my heart off, and
What?
yeah, and it was terrible. Like, who cares? I mean, I care very much, but really, who cares?
Yeah,
Um,
nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Although, again, it's one of those things where you might see a friend do it and you might be like, ah. But if you saw a stranger do it and it wasn't your thing, you'd probably just move on. It's what you wouldn't like die for them.
Well, okay, so here's the question. Like, I feel like, I saw somebody say something. Well, it's about finding people who fan your flames. I think it
Mm,
was Will Smith like thing where he was just like, find the people who fan your flames and get away from everybody else. Which I
I
don't
like
know
it.
if that's yeah, I like it too. Um, it seems a little extreme for in some cases, especially with family. But
Well, but
um,
not in a creative sense. I don't think that's extreme. Like, don't if you don't get the feedback you want from mom or from brother or sister or whatever, don't or your cousin, just
yeah,
don't show it
don't
to them.
seek feedback from them.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
totally.
I mean,
And
yeah, you don't have to like never speak to them.
you're dead to me.
Will Smith told me I gotta cut you out of my life.
But
Sorry,
I
you were
mean,
on
I
a.
get, I no, I guess I think that if somebody were to say to you, like, if you were to do something and it's outside of your, whatever your normal behavior, and they're to
Yeah,
say, "Are you sure about that?" Maybe it's worth a second thought. But if it's something like, you're not a dancer, buddy, and then you check yourself and you're like, I am a dancer. Like, I don't show that to people because I'm not where I want to be yet, but this is where I want to
mm,
go. Like, after a slight check,
yeah,
then you can be like, okay, I am going to seek out people who just appreciate this journey enough to share it with me, and to fan my flames, and to know that if I really, really want to dance, there's something in there. There's
yeah,
something behind it, and like, if you're like, that's not you, it's just like, you don't know me then.
right.
If I'm gonna come to that conclusion and you don't get it, it's just like, well, you either I could try to help you get there, but if you're gonna try to bring me back to your conclusion based on what,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just like, okay,
But
thanks.
it's both those things that can be such poison though.
So that's why it's so
slow
important
release
to.
poison.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like just even a really or a huh or no, maybe that would yeah.
Interesting.
Anything it can just spread out through your bloodstream, even if at first you're like
Oh
you don't
yeah.
know, but and then it just spreads
Yeah.
out through your bloodstream. But I think you're also right that if you're gonna get there, you have to. That's one skill you have to develop is pushing through the nose. And you hear that sort of almost trite advice from people that have made it.
Well,
From
and I think that it's incomplete because I think that actually it's not just about pushing through the nose. It's more about.
through the
It's more
nose.
about. No, it's about. It's sort of like distancing yourself from those downers
Yeah,
and finding a community. I think nobody does it without other people fanning the flames. So
yeah,
you've got to keep looking for people who are going to find your flames, and if fan your flames, and if you want to dance and you're not very good at it, there's a community that can fan you
yeah,
at whatever level you are, and see you, take you for where you are, and also take your ambitions seriously,
Yeah.
because that's the other killer too. Is it was like, oh, you want to do that's nice. I'm gonna put you in the Christmas pageant, and
Yeah.
I've given you this little thing, and because that's about the level that we feel that you should get. It's just like if that
Right.
is good for you, that's cool. But like if actually it's just like, no, I have this vision of inventing a whole new style of dance.
Yeah.
Like somebody be like, you're crazy. But if you really know the person, you'd be like, that's an interesting thing to want.
Yeah.
Let's explore this. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's really true. And but I do think you have to, like, if you think about actors, let's say you wanted to be a movie star, any actor, let alone movie star, has fought their way through so much rejection. That's just known. Part of being an actor is
Yeah,
getting rejection. You go to auditions, you don't get called back. You don't even contact people who you don't call back to an audition.
yeah,
You just don't. You just don't hear. And if you want to be a famous, a top athlete, you have to fight through a lot of rejection. It's just this like dog eat dog world,
yeah.
and
But these are perfect examples of you. If you don't find a community of like cheerleaders, like a bunch
yeah.
of people who are around you, being like, "No, you're awesome. You got it. Don't worry about it. Next time, you can go get them." If,
Well, that's
I don't
right.
think you
But
can
I
do it.
think what I'm getting at is something you said earlier, which is this like you also do have to find it in yourself to push through those doubting
Oh
moments,
yeah.
like hoping that you can only stay around the cheerleaders or that you can only get positive feedback or that no one will harsh your buzz
No, no, you're
is,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just like that's not realistic. And that's, I think, when I look back on my life, that's one thing I've really lacked is the strength to be like, no, I do want to do this. No, I've been too worried about whatever I've been worried about, or like I've reacted too strongly to the lack of encouragement or the idea that maybe that was too far of a dream or however those things got introduced. But I do think there is that sort of like, that there is that super trite advice about like, just if you set your mind to it, don't let anybody tell you different. And that's easy to hear and it's almost easy to disregard, but there is really something to that as one of the ingredients of just like, nope, I'm going this way. And someone's like, no, you should probably go that way. No, I'm going this way. And you don't even have to have the argument with them, but you just have to know it in yourself. You have to feel it strongly enough in yourself. Well, there
Yeah.
it is. Believe in yourself and do the work.
Nice.
Well, I didn't make that up. I got that from a local newspaper columnist, but I like it and I printed it out on my wall. Wait, here it is.
What do you think it means to believe in yourself? That's an interesting. I mean, everybody's heard it. That came in focus really nice. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you were just like moving around, and all of a sudden, went into but what do you think believing in yourself means? I feel like there's a way to interpret that. You got a first take on it?
Well, I think it's, yeah. I mean, to me, it's just this exact thing we're talking about. Like, what gives you the audacity to think that you should do this TV show and you're going to host it and you're going to interview people? What gives you the audacity to think that you should put out solo piano or do this or do that or have a podcast or turn it on and just talk to your, buddies, talk to each other about creative stuff? Like who gave you that permission? And it's just like, well, I feel that this is something that I feel in myself and that I want to do and that I want to get out and that I believe, I believe
Yeah,
in my own
yeah. There's a
contribution.
voice. Yeah, there's like a voice inside of you that says, "This is worthwhile. Like this is something that should be done and should do." It's like a calling, and it's like being able to listen. Yeah, there's a voice in there. Do you believe it? That is a
Right.
big question, and it's a real question in my mind all the time. It's like I have a really bold, adventurous voice in my head that
Yeah.
tells me all kinds of amazing things, and there's another voice inside of me that says, um, that's not real, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about, like, yeah, like what is the voice that is looking up and being bold, and what is the voice that is saying no,
Right.
no, no, no.
Right. Well, this I like this. I like this Believe in
Yeah,
yourself
it's
and do the
great.
work. And it's this local columnist, Kevin Fisher Paulson, that I read it in his column, and I can't remember if he made it up. He might have made it up, or maybe someone had given him that wisdom. But I love the two halves of that. It's not
Yeah.
just believe in yourself. It's believe in yourself and do the work. You got to show up. You can't just be like, I could be a great such and such. That everybody thinks they could be a great such and such, but you got to do the work. You got to show up, and the work is hard and it's a slog, and hopefully you enjoy it. But I love those two halves of that equation.
Yeah. The third half for me is believe in yourself, and then buy the gear, and then do the work. That could be the hardest part. Is like when you're not quite sure if something's going to work out. It's just like, well, should I buy this really nice camera?
Totally. And yeah, and I mean, it's such a thing, buying the gear and then not doing the work with the gear, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, let me just keep setting up. Oh, well, I got to get this other thing. As soon as I get that, then I'm going to really start creating.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you're doing the work, man. You're doing the work. You're getting the equipment, you're buying the gear, and you're doing the work. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but you know what? You got to lead with doing the work, because if you're leading with doing the work, then you know what equipment and gear that you need that's not letting you get there. If you lead with getting the gear, who knows if you're going to do it. But if you're trying to do something, you're like, I just need a video switcher, then get your video switcher. Then it's
All right.
decided. Okay, man.
like
Well,
Thank you,
we've
sir.
solved it. Yeah.
Solved
next
it once
time.
again.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
End broadcast.